Want to make sure before I get rolling, you know. Good evening. Can we start off this meeting with an introduction from our interpreter, please?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Andrea. I'm here with my colleague, Liz, and we're here with the Community Language Cooperative. We're going to be practicing language justice today, and we're going to have simultaneous interpretation in English and in Spanish so that everybody can hear and speak in the language of their heart. Once we turn on the interpretation, after I'm done saying this in Spanish, you're going to see a globe at the bottom of your screen where you're going to be able to select your preferred language. If you are in the room and if there's going to be public hearing, I want to remind you that any public speak in Spanish is going to have to be translated, interpreted consecutively. So the person will speak in one language, and then the interpreter will have the opportunity to say everything into the other language. Hola a todos, soy Andrea, soy aquí con mi colega Liz, estamos aquí con la Community Language Cooperative y vamos a estar practicando la justicia del lenguaje el día de hoy para que todos podamos comunicarnos en el idioma de nuestro corazón o como nos sintamos más cómodos. Una vez que aprendamos la interpretación, ustedes van a ver un globo que va a aparecer en la parte inferior de su pantalla, donde van a poder seleccionar su idioma. Les recuerdo que si van a hablar durante la audiencia pública, toda la conversación que se haga en español va a tener que ser interpretada al inglés de manera consecutiva por el intérprete. And thank you, host. We can start interpretation now.
Thank you, Andrea. I'll call this regular meeting of the Sheridan City Council for November 10th, 2025 to order. The time is 7:02 p.m. Can we have roll call, please? Should we do it again? Okay.
Thank you.
Right. We have all members present tonight. Can we please rise for the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance?
Lord of the universe, this is a time in our year where many of us turn our attention to the spiritual side of our lives when we consider what light we will follow. Help us to understand that no matter what name is given and in what language it is expressed, that philosophy called the Golden Rule is indeed the most true guidepost by which we should mark the trails of our existence here. Remind us that if that concept were universally held as a standard by the people of all nations and faiths, there would be no wars, no hunger, no crimes against one another. We pray that you continue to bless the work to help those less fortunate. Please give us an international time of peace on earth, goodwill towards men, inspired by our great leaders and philosophers who themselves were inspired by you, O Lord. And finally, we ask you to guide those who, as our government leaders, make daily decisions that affect us, so that their efforts, whether international or local, shall be motivated by the same great rule of charity and goodwill. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any changes to our agenda?
No changes to the agenda, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Next, we have staff reports. City Clerk.
Thank you. Just a couple of reminders. Make sure you're checking or check your mailboxes before you leave tonight. And then I just wanted to provide an election update. So I first want to thank all the candidates for running this year. It's nice to have such an interest that we get to have an election. There's been many years in the past that we've had to cancel it because we haven't had interest. I think we had some great races across the board. And right now the results are unofficial, but they're posted online. They're posted on the windows here in the building. Official results will be November 25th, but we got some close races, and yeah, so thank you all who have participated, and congrats to those that will be coming in and as our new mayor and new council members.
Thank you.
Yep.
City Attorney, do you have anything for us?
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. So in the interest of time today, given the full agenda, no big report, but we are working on a number of matters related to updating the wireless code, development, liquor licensing, all sorts of interesting things for the city. Thank you.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And also in the interest of time, I will be brief because I'm sure all these folks didn't come here to hear my manager's report. Two things I want to touch on though. One, just to let council know that this is process has gotten started, is that I attended as a city representative to the Permanent Supportive Housing Needs Assessment kickoff meeting for the Tri-Cities effort along that line. So that process is getting started. It's about an 8-month timeline, and this is going to include interviews with city stakeholders, community partners. There's going to be 3 different community outreach events. I'll be bringing much more details onto those as they become clearer. But just to let council know that that process has started, and I'm very excited about that's going to get going here. Just a couple quick notes. We will have City Hall closed tomorrow for Veterans Day observation. There's no council meeting on the 24th, which would have been our regular scheduled second meeting of the month. And then some good news on the insurance and healthcare side, which you don't regularly hear me say, because we have been working through our broker, who is Gallagher, and negotiated our healthcare insurance renewal at a rate of an increase of only 4.9%, which has been unheard of lately. Anything under double digits is fantastic. We originally started out at an 8.9% actually increase with them, and through negotiations and working through our broker, brought it down to 4.9%, which has saved the city approximately $56,000 in healthcare. So that's a nice little bit going into, especially for our budget discussion tonight. Let you know there's a little bit extra in there that we didn't anticipate, so that's nice. Mayor, that's all I'll say, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the City Manager? Chief?
Nothing to report tonight. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. Any more questions for staff before we move on? Okay. Then we'll go to the minutes of the regular City Council meeting of October 27th, 2025. I have a motion from Councilmember Camacho and a second from Councilmember Moreno. Any discussion on the minutes? Please cast your votes. Councilmember Camacho. Thank you. That motion is approved unanimously. Next, we have the consent agenda, approval of disbursements, authorized disbursements that have been or will be made from October 16th, 2025 to October 31st, 2025 in the amount of $644,510.39 per the referenced and attached transfer of funds. I have a motion from Councilmember Stang and a second from Councilmember Moreno. Any discussion or questions on the consent agenda? Please cast your votes. Motion is approved unanimously. Next, we have items for individual consideration, ordinances on second reading. And on these ordinances, we'll have an opportunity for comment from the public. First, we have ordinance 16 of 2025, an ordinance of the City of Sheridan adopting a budget for the fiscal year of 2025 and appropriating sums for defraying the expenses and liabilities for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2026 and ending December 31st, 2026 in accordance with the statutes of the state of Colorado and the charter of the City of Sheridan. I have a motion from Councilmember Whitaker and a second from Councilmember Stang. Does the council have any questions on ordinance 16? Okay. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak about ordinance 16? I don't see anyone. So I'd just like to thank our staff, our financial director, and all the department heads for putting together their requests and putting another good budget in front of us.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. And I wanted to thank the council as well for all your hard work on this budget. And just so the folks that are assembled here tonight, I think we don't, we just pass a budget like that. We've had numerous meetings about our budget starting many months ago. And this is the culmination of all those meetings to pass this budget ordinance. And I want to thank the council for all of your hard work and support. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, let's have a vote. That motion is approved unanimously. Next, we have ordinance 18 of 2025, an ordinance of the City Council of Sheridan, Colorado, amending sections 22-85 and 22-114 of the Sheridan Municipal Code regarding background check procedures for pawnbrokers and massage facilities. I have a motion from Councilmember Whitaker and a second from Councilmember Moreno. Did you want to add anything about this ordinance?
Yeah,
before
thank
we
you,
vote?
Madam Mayor. So since we have a lot of public here today, and since many were missing the last meeting, I just want to give a reminder what this is about. So the city clerk and I were reviewing the city code and realized that the procedures for background checks were varied across the various disciplines in which we do background checks. This unifies the code. It gives discretion to the city clerk to determine whether it be done through a third party, through the police department, however it is appropriate for that industry. Rather than being directed specifically to the city clerk or the police department. So that's what it does, is unifies the code for background checks.
Great. Okay. Any questions from council on ordinance 18? Okay. Anyone from the public who'd like to speak on ordinance 18? Seeing none, let's vote. That motion is approved unanimously. Next, we have a resolution. Resolution 35 of 2025, a resolution of the City Council of Sheridan, Colorado, approving a contract with Earth Saving Solutions for flooring installation services. I have a motion from Councilmember Moreno and a second from Councilmember Stang. Is there anything that you want to share about this resolution?
Just very quickly, Mayor, as council will recall, this is a contract to fix some of the flooring issues that the city has had with installation of flooring in the police department. And I won't go into all the mind-numbing details for everybody here with that, but this contract will allow the city to fix the flooring that was improperly installed down there. And council will recall that we did receive a settlement from the previous company that did this. It does not, unfortunately, cover the full expenses of the new flooring, but this will hopefully and finally fix some of the flooring issues that we've had down there. I do have our Public Works Director, Jeremy Reichert, is online, and Chief, I don't know if you wanted to speak to this at all, but that's the issue before you, is for the contract to fulfill that.
Great. Okay. Anybody have any questions, or would you like more clarification? Yeah.
Having seen that floor, it was, it appears to have been damaged by water too, right? Does the solution include, drainage solutions, a way so that the new floor isn't going to get waterlogged when it floods or something?
Yeah, great question. And I'm going to defer to I said Jeremy before, Jeremiah. I think he's online.
Yep. Good
Okay.
evening, council. Thank you. I'm at home today, sick, but I'm prepared to speak on this. The flooring issues that are existing in the police department are mostly related to vapor that's coming and installation that wasn't done to the best industry standard. So what's down there right now is a luxury vinyl plank that's a glue down, and we're moving into a ceramic tile because of the moisture that is experienced down there. Certainly we did have some flooding, and that was kind of a separate issue, which we also got some resolution out of the insurance company for that vendor that was doing the janitorial work, but they are kind of unrelated, I think, generally speaking, and we are pretty confident that the new floor that's going in is going in by somebody that is very familiar with the environment down there. They're testing for it. They're taking all the correct, what I would call ASTM or engineering standards to install that floor. So I'm confident that we're going to end up with a good result. Unfortunately, it's just a little more expensive because they have to undo what was done previously.
Any further questions about this resolution? No? Okay, let's vote then. That motion is approved unanimously. Next tonight, we have a public hearing to consider the application to rezone property located at 2500 West Hampton Avenue from the business, light industrial, and manufactured home park districts to plan unit development, PUD, with underlying mixed-use commercial MXC zoning. Okay. So I have a notice just to, before we get into this, about the comment period, which will be after testimony and some exhibits. When we have that public comment hearing, we'll have 3 minutes per person, and we've had some people circulating to get you to sign in. So you can raise your hand if you still need to sign in, and I'll give you another opportunity a little further into the meeting, but I just want to make sure everybody gets on the list that wants to be on there. So you can have 3 minutes of time, and then you can't give your time to anyone else, and we'll have no remote comment via Zoom. All right. I'd like to call this public hearing to order at the time of 7:17 p.m. My name is Tara Bider-Fleur, and I'm the mayor of the city of Sheridan, and I'll be presiding over this hearing. Tonight, we'll be reviewing an application to rezone property located at 2500 West Hampton Avenue from the business, light industrial, and manufactured home park districts to plan unit development, PUD, with underlying mixed-use commercial MXC zoning. Prior to commencing this evening's proceedings, are there any disclosures or recusals that need to be stated for this hearing? Do you want to start? Go ahead, Councilmember.
I'd like to disclose that that my husband sits on the Sheridan Planning Commission. He and I have not discussed this matter, and his participation on the Planning Commission does not impact my ability to decide this matter fairly and impartially. Also, I'd like to disclose that I inadvertently received an email containing a news article related to this public hearing. I will not be considering that content of the email as part of tonight's public hearing, and I'm confident in my continued ability to remain impartial and fair throughout these proceedings.
Thank you, Councilmember Moreno. I will also disclose that I inadvertently received the same email containing a news article related to this public hearing. However, I'm not going to consider the content of that email as part of tonight's public hearing, and I'm confident in my continued ability to remain impartial and fair throughout these proceedings. Anybody else who has anything to disclose? Okay, we'll move along. Is the applicant or representative of the applicant present? Please come up to the microphone, identify yourself, your business name and address for the record. And if you're represented by legal counsel, please have your legal counsel also identify themselves for the record.
Good evening, Heath Kennedy representing the Garrett Companies. Our Denver headquarters is located at 5075 South Syracuse Street, 8th floor, Denver, Colorado.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. David Foster, Foster Graham, Melson and Kalisher here on behalf of the applicant, 360 South Garfield, Denver.
Thank you. You can be seated. The purpose of this hearing is for the City Council to receive information, data, and testimony for the City Council to make findings and reach a conclusion to approve or deny this rezoning application. The hearing procedure we'll use as guidance, but not be strictly governed by, is the Colorado Rules of Civil Procedure. All interested parties will be allowed to speak. On this matter, we'll first hear from the Community Development Director, Andrew Raggi, followed by a presentation from the applicant. The council may ask questions of the staff and the applicant following their respective presentations. We'll then hear public comments, followed by any response of the applicant. At this time, I'll enter the following exhibits into the record. Exhibit A, staff report. Exhibit B, application for rezoning. Exhibit C, proof of publication. Do we need to pause for a second? Okay.
One moment, Mayor, just a
Yeah.
moment, please.
Okay, we're good to go? Okay. Exhibit C, proof of publication. Exhibit D, affidavit of mailing. Exhibit E, affidavit of posting at the property. Is the city ready to begin?
Yes.
All right, please proceed.
All right. Great. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. And for those who don't know me, my name is Andrew Rogge, and I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Sheridan. Tonight, I will be presenting the staff report for the 2500 West Hampton Avenue PUD rezoning and official development plan. This request is to rezone property from the business, light industrial, and manufactured home park districts to planned unit development with underlying mixed-use commercial zoning. Sheridan City Code requires that requests to rezone property are submitted to the city and reviewed both by Planning Commission for a recommendation and then by City Council for a final decision. So with that, we'll go over a little bit of the background and the proposed rezoning. So this 16-acre subject property is comprised of 3 unplatted parcels in the River Point neighborhood. It's located directly to the west of the River Point Shopping Center. The western parcel is zoned business, and the eastern parcel is zoned business light industrial. The entirety of the property is within the manufactured home park overlay district, and there's also a portion of the floodplain overlay district that's present on the southern border of the property. The current use of the property is for an overnight campground for RVs, and there's a small portion on the east side of the property that's used for long-term RV storage, and that's under the overhead electric transmission lines. So in Sheridan's code, the overnight campground use is defined as a conditional use. Staff believes that it may be a legally non-conforming use since we were not able to find a approved conditional use permit in the file for the property. And then the RV storage use is a permitted use in the business light industrial district. The Flying Saucer RV Park has been owned by 4 generations of the same family for over 75 years. It's been expanded from an initial trailer court established in 1949 with 25 spaces to a full park with 160 spaces, an office, and amenity spaces. More information has been provided by the owner and is attached to the staff report this evening. So the current zoning of the property allows a wide variety of commercial and light industrial uses, along with many conditional uses. However, within the existing zoning, multifamily uses are either restricted or prohibited entirely. Within the business district, residential use is limited to floors above ground level. And then in the business light industrial district, residential uses are prohibited completely. So what this means is for the current configuration of the property, residential uses are only allowed on the upper floors of the western parcel and then are prohibited entirely on the eastern parcel. The current owner of the property is Flying Saucer Mobile Home Park, Inc. They have entered into a contract with the Garrett Companies, which is a multifamily housing developer. Tonight we have Miss Ann Whipple representing Flying Saucer and Mr. Heath Kennedy representing the Garrett Companies. The applicant has applied for a rezoning to the PUD district with underlying mixed-use commercial zoning. Their intention is to construct a 362-unit apartment building with 7 buildings, around 4 stories in height. This will include private improvements such as a leasing office, private tenant amenities, parking lots and garages, and then public improvements such as improvements to the Tract O and River Point Parkway intersection, a new 8-foot wide recreational trail along Bear Creek, and a pedestrian bridge across Bear Creek at Bryant Street. The applicant submitted a pre-planning application for staff review in September of 2024, And a neighborhood meeting was held for this project in June of this year, with the formal application filed later that month. Additionally, since the Planning Commission hearing, the Garrett Companies has been able to obtain consent from the BNSF Railway Company to include a small portion of property. It's kind of at the center south of the property that is currently owned by BNSF. It's a very small piece of property, but it allows them to add that to this application. Prior to tonight's meeting, we've received a number of letters or correspondence regarding this application, including 2 that you received this evening. And I think we're at about 7 letters in support and 7 letters against the application. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the zoning, land use, and subdivision in the area. So maps were included in your packet this evening. To the north, we have US 285, a scrap metal yard, and some commercial and retail businesses across 285. That's all zoned business and business light industrial. To the south, we have Bear Creek and the Broken T Golf Course, which is zoned PUD and also intergovernmental agreement with the city of Inglewood. To the east, we have River Point Restaurants and Medical Offices. This area is zoned PUD commercial. And then to the west, we have mini storage, both indoor and outdoor, which is zoned business light industrial. And then I did want to note the future land use map in our 2015 comprehensive plan identifies the future land use of this area as mixed use. All right, so now we're going to talk about compliance with the city's municipal code. So requests to rezone property to the planned unit development district require that the applicant create an official development plan, which is subject to additional standards, and that official development plan designate an underlying zone district. So just as a reminder, we have the rezoning request standards that apply to all rezoning requests, and then we have to look at all the standards for official development plans as well. So first tonight, I'm going to talk about our standards for zoning and rezoning. The first criteria is criteria A, and that's that the proposed zoning promotes the health, safety, or welfare of the inhabitants of the city and the purposes of this article. Staff believes that the proposed zoning will promote the health, safety, and welfare of the city. The existing zoning of these 2 parcels includes multiple permitted uses, which are no longer compatible with surrounding land uses, and could be developed on the property with no rezoning process like we have tonight required. So I know in the packet, some of the labels may have been missing. If you were looking at your packet, the business district permitted and conditional uses are found on page 111 and the top of page 112. And then the business light industrial zone district uses start basically at the bottom of page 112 and go all the way through page 115. So a couple of the uses, just a small selection of things that we would be permitted under current zoning includes adult entertainment establishments, office warehouse units, fabrication, blueprinting, dyeing, and printing facilities, outdoor storage yards, wholesale or retail vehicle sales lots, laboratories, mini storage warehouses, pawn shops, motor vehicle service facilities, motor vehicle wash and or detail establishments, and stonemasonry operations, just to name a couple of those uses. I can tell you that our comprehensive plan does not encourage the city to develop any more of those uses really anywhere in the city. But what we also know is that there is also ample demand for both the business light industrial zone district and many of those permitted uses that I just mentioned. Our most recent rezoning was just 1,200 feet away from the subject property. That was 1913 West Hamilton Place. That was a rezoning from single family to business light industrial to accommodate an outdoor contractor storage yard. And then back in 2016, we also rezoned the former gas station at 3601 South Bryant from commercial to business light industrial. And that's to accommodate a new 3-level indoor climate controlled mini storage warehouse that was constructed in 2018. So at the same time, while both of these zone districts either heavily restrict or entirely prohibit multifamily units, we've been doing a lot of work looking at our housing stock, partially prompted by Senate Bill 24-174, which requires cities such as Sheridan to create a housing needs assessment. So we've been working with Economic and Planning Systems, which has prepared a housing needs assessment for the city of Sheridan. They were at the last study session with City Council. This report that they have completed concludes that there is a current need of around 309 housing units in the city of Sheridan, and through 2035, an additional need of 409 units. So that's a total need from where we stand today of a little over 700 housing units that are needed here in the city of Sheridan. However, during the last 10 years, the city, we also found out through this process that the city issued 0 permits for any sort of 4-story apartment projects from 2015 to 2014, like the one that we're looking at tonight. So over the past decade, though, we have permitted 63 units of for-sale affordable housing with the Habitat for Humanity Sheridan Square project. We've also permitted 149 units of rental housing through the Bonsai Apartments project. But during that same time period, we only issued permits for 8 market rate units. So of the 212 that have been permitted, over 96% of that housing over the past 10 years had some degree of textbook affordability with it. So a deed restriction, tax credits, something like that. And the last large-scale market rate apartment complex the city has developed was the Avana on the Platte complex, which was completed in 2008, 2009, and added 316 units. So while we do acknowledge that the proposed zoning and project do not perfectly address all of our identified housing needs, it's really unlikely that any one project would. It does help to fill a substantial portion of those gaps, and definitely more so than many of the other uses that you see in the business and business light industrial zone districts. And then finally, what staff considers to be the most important health, safety, welfare issue raised by this rezoning is certainly the displacement of current residents of the Flying Saucer RV Park. I do want to point out that unfortunately there is no criteria in the city zoning code addressing such issues, but staff has been upfront with the applicant that this is a huge concern for the city. City staff shared many of the concerns regarding displacement that I'm sure you're going to hear about tonight from your constituents. But as a result, the applicant has voluntarily expressed an intention to contract with a local housing relocation consultant after obtaining zoning approval at council. So what this means is they're looking to work with residents, provide advance notice, project updates, contracting with that qualified housing relocation consultant, and really working with residents one-on-one to develop specific relocation plans. And I'll let the applicant speak to that later on. Again, as a reminder, these intentions have been voluntarily offered by the applicant and are not and cannot really be made a component of zoning approval or a condition of approval. But they do represent a good faith effort to offset the effects of the park closure on current residents that I would say is specific to this current applicant. So that concludes the health, safety, welfare analysis. Additionally, the other zoning criteria we have to look at is at least one of 3 factors have to exist on the property or for the project. Staff feels that 2 of the 3 apply here. The third one is really just if a property is zoned in error, so it's not really relevant. First, though, staff does feel that the proposed zoning is consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan. Through our analysis, staff has identified at least 9 citywide or neighborhood goals, objectives, or actions that this proposal meets. A couple of the ones that stood out to us, for the River Point neighborhood specifically, we have an action to encourage multifamily residential development along Hampton near the intersection with River Point Parkway. And then additionally, to consider working with the owners of the Flying Saucer RV Park to incorporate permanent residential homes and more retail development in the neighborhood. In terms of our citywide goals, we have an action that, as appropriate, ensure that new development or redevelopment projects are required to install trails that contribute to the overall trail system in the city and region as a whole. And then we have another objective that we want to enforce current policies that new development is required to pay its own way in terms of providing adequate public infrastructure to serve the proposed project. And I would say this is the first large-scale development that I've worked on in almost 10 years with the city that has not requested some sort of public subsidy or fee waiver from us at this point. Additionally, the other criteria that we feel applies is that there's been a material change in the character of the neighborhood or in the city generally, such that the proposed zoning would be in the public interest and consistent with this change. So the current use of the property was established in the late 1940s and was later on zoned. And both that land use and zoning predates the kind of creation of the 2 major properties to the south and to the east. So to the south, we have the Broken Tee Golf Course that was established between the 1970s and the 1990s. And then to the east, we have the 135-acre River Point at Sheridan Shopping Center. That property was rezoned in 2006, and then construction happened between 2006 and 2009. So staff feels that the legacy zoning of the subject property with that business and business light industrial zoning is no longer compatible with these adjacent recreational and retail land uses. and the permitted and conditional uses which could be developed under these two zone districts are really at odds with the significant public and private investment which has occurred in the surrounding area. So those are the zoning criteria. And again, if this was a standard rezoning, we would kind of stop our analysis there. Because it's a PUD rezoning, we have to look at standards of approval for official development plans. Those are criteria A through I in your staff report tonight. So I'm going to briefly touch on those. So criteria A, the proposed development needs to be in harmony and compatible with the character of the surrounding areas and neighborhood. Staff feels that the residential multifamily housing use is compatible with the character of the surrounding area and River Point. This property is less than a mile from an RTD light rail station. It's directly on the Bear Creek Trail system, which easily connects to the Mary Carter Greenway, and then is also on US 285, which connects to Santa Fe Drive. So this development really takes advantage of significant transportation, recreational, and retail amenities that already exist here in Sheridan. The other uses that are currently permitted in the business and business light industrial district are not in harmony or compatible with the character of the surrounding area. And staff feels that they could really have a serious detrimental effect to the regional trail system or the viability of River Point if they were developed on this property. Additionally, criteria B, the proposal must be in accordance with the Sheridan Comprehensive Plan. As mentioned before, the proposal meets at least 9 major goals, actions, or objectives. And I would also add that it's unusual but not unheard of for these larger properties to be actually mentioned directly in the comprehensive plan with their own set of goals, much like the Flying Saucer property was. But I think this really speaks to the significance of the property in the city of Sheridan and its high-profile location. Criteria C, the proposal cannot result in an over-intensive use of land. Want to talk a little bit about the mixed-use commercial zone district. So we created this zone district back in 2017. It is our newest zone district. We had a lengthy review process with Planning Commission, several months, multiple meetings, and really settled on that 35 dwelling units per acre as an acceptable and appropriate density for the city of Sheridan. So this official development plan does permit that density, which would allow up to 508 residential units. However, the applicant is only proposing to construct 362, which is about 71% of what would otherwise be allowed under that zone district. I would also add that as far back as 2006, Tract O was dedicated to the city of Sheridan for the future construction of a public street. What that is, it is a piece of land that goes between River Point Parkway and the eastern side of the Flying Saucer RV Park property. And it was planned about 20 years ago so that if there was any future redevelopment of that property, it could easily connect to the public street network through River Point Parkway. And the applicant is proposing to make this the main entrance into their development. And then finally, the applicant has conducted a traffic signal warrant or need analysis. There were 2 major outcomes of that. The first one was that the deceleration lane from Hampton onto South Bryant Street needs to be lengthened to meet current CDOT standards. And then that study also concluded that the intersection of Tract O and River Point Parkway needs to be improved. And both of these improvements, there's a lot of background traffic already in the area. So these are things that are probably already required. However, looking at a development coming in and adding additional traffic, that is really the trigger to get those improvements constructed and built. And this is a benefit to the city because we do not otherwise have funds or projects going that would improve either of those 2 deficiencies right now. So ultimately, we're confident that the proposed development will not result in an over-intensive use of land. Criteria D, the official development plan and proposal cannot have a material adverse effect on community capital improvement programs. As I mentioned earlier, there is ample existing infrastructure in the area that the applicant can kind of use and plug into. And then additionally, the applicant will be responsible for further improvements such as those to the Bear Creek Trail system, to Tract O, and then to the Tract O and River Point Parkway intersection. For criteria E, the proposal cannot require a level of community facilities and services greater than that which is available. Through the referral process, this application was referred to over 20 different utility and other governmental agencies. We did not receive any objections to this proposal based on insufficient capacity. And additionally, the application was referred to the Sheridan School District Number 2, to CDOT, RTD, and South Suburban Parks and Rec District, and none of those agencies expressed any concern with inadequate facilities to serve the development. Additionally, the applicant has agreed to dedicate to the city of Sheridan approximately 1.5 acres of the existing property, which contains both the channel and banks of Bear Creek. And this will remove most, if not all, of the floodplain that currently exists on the property from private ownership and transfer it over to public ownership for floodplain preservation and recreational purposes. The applicant will also be required to install a new 8-foot wide concrete trail along the north side of Bear Creek and provide a pedestrian bridge across Bear Creek at Bryant Street. And those last two projects are both identified and supported by the 2023 Bear Creek Trail Study, projects BC 14 and 16, which were included in your packet this evening. For criteria F, the proposal cannot result in undue traffic congestion or traffic hazards. As I mentioned before, there was a signal warrant analysis and traffic study completed that had 2 suggested improvement projects come out of it. And as I mentioned before, those are not projects that the city currently has funds available to address. So it is a benefit to the city that the applicant will be required to take on those 2 projects. For criteria G, the proposal cannot cause significant air, water, or noise pollution. The permitted uses in the official development plan do not typically cause significant air, water, or noise pollution concerns, including the specific multifamily residential use. However, I would mention that the uses in business and business light industrial typically do have a number of air, water, or noise quality concerns. And additionally, there was a memo prepared by the project engineer, Adrian Luce, that was attached to your staff report tonight and goes into more of those details. For criteria H, the proposal needs to be adequately landscape buffered and screened. One thing that came up, the applicant did conduct an acoustics or a noise study to address the traffic noise trespass from US 285 onto the property. And this study determined that units with windows and balconies facing US 285 would likely have noise levels exceeding a residential standard. So as a result, the applicant has proposed and CDOT has accepted a proposal to basically install windows and balcony doors that have a higher level of soundproofing to kind of mitigate those concerns. And if you'll remember, this was the same approach that was used for the Bonsai Apartments project on South Federal that had some similar issues. Additionally, the proposal will be required to follow all Sheridan landscaping and screening requirements. The only major deviation there is that along the River Point buffer on the east side of the property, they'll be allowed to do smaller ornamental type trees due to the overhead electric lines. And then criteria I, finally, will not otherwise be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of present or future inhabitants of Sheridan. So the applicant has developed multiple studies in addition to the signal warrant analysis, an acoustics study. This includes both a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessment. Those assessments help to ensure that the development is both economically feasible and will not endanger the health, safety, or welfare of future residents of the development. The property is within 1,000 foot of a former landfill, so it is subject to the Flammable Gas Overlay District, which requires some consultation with Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment, or CDPHE. As a result, the applicant has agreed to do 3 things to mitigate those concerns. The first one is to enter the voluntary cleanup program with the state of Colorado. Additionally, to create a materials management plan for during construction, and to install an active vapor mitigation system to ensure safety for future residents. And then finally, just want to repeat that the applicant is aware of and has indicated a desire to continue working with the existing residents of the Flying Saucer RV Park to address the health, safety, welfare concerns that are raised by the closing of the park on those residents. Again, it is something that the applicant has voluntarily decided to address with both the current owner and the city and the residents, and not all developers would even consider something like this. So in terms of, that's kind of our criteria for official development plans. I know there's a lot in there. We'll talk a little bit about our referral agency and department comments. You had a very long list of agencies that this was referred to in your staff report tonight. Most indicated that they would provide comments during either the site development plan or permitting phase of the project. In terms of public notification, A neighborhood meeting was conducted for the proposed rezoning on June 24th of this year. At this meeting, we had 14 individuals in attendance, including staff and members of the applicant team. And the notes and notices for that meeting were attached to your staff report this evening. And public notice was also made for both the Planning Commission and City Council hearings. All of those affidavits, notices, lists, and maps associated with those notifications were attached to your staff report tonight. And I did want to point out the city also worked with the applicant to make sure that signs were posted in both English and Spanish for tonight's meeting, and also sent an additional round of notifications for tonight's hearing, which is not otherwise required by the city code. However, both staff and the applicant felt that it was appropriate to conduct that additional notification. Planning Commission hearing was held on October 1st. We had approximately 60 individuals attend in person. At that meeting, the commission heard from 16 members of the public. And based on analysis, I would say about 15 of the 16 speakers were interpreted by staff as being against the proposed redevelopment. And then at the conclusion of that public hearing and after discussion, Planning Commission voted 4-1 to recommend approval of the rezoning to City Council. And both the minutes and resolution of that meeting were attached to your staff report this evening. So ultimately, while this is not an easy situation for either the city or the current residents of the Flying Saucer RV Park, this application does provide a resolution to several questions surrounding the future of the property. The proposed PUD is in line with Sheridan's comprehensive plan and guarantees that a number of incompatible uses which are currently allowed will not be developed on the property. The applicant's proposed development also provides 362 units of badly needed market rate housing. And finally, the applicant's willingness to continue engaging with residents and intention to hire a local housing relocation consultant cannot be overlooked. So with that, staff is recommending approval of this rezoning application with the condition that the applicant enter into a development agreement with the city of Sheridan for items pertaining to public improvements and dedications in conjunction with the rezoning request. So this concludes the staff presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one.
Go ahead.
So you said that there would be no public subsidy or fee waiver, so there wouldn't be break on taxes or the developer, nothing like what Bonsai kind of got that break on taxes for the developer.
That's a great question. That's correct. I can really just speak to, where we stand today. That request has not been made to the city. Typically, when a project needs those sorts of subsidies, that is kind of one of the first thing that comes up in that pre-application meeting, because for them, for a developer like Medici Consulting Group, if they can't get certain subsidies into their capital stack, they just really don't have a project. So it's not to say that they couldn't ask for those in the future, but to this point, we haven't received any requests, and I'm not feeling like we will.
I have one more. Is there any projection on what increase in revenue at River Point would look like with an additional, 200 units of people?
No, we have not prepared any calculations on that. The application was referred to Kimco. They didn't express any concerns. A number of city staff are aware of it, but we really haven't gotten into doing that calculation. I would say oftentimes you might hire a consultant like EPS to do that for you, especially for like even larger projects. That often happens, but we have not done that for this project.
Thank you.
I was just wondering if our staff had reviewed the environmental or traffic plans, specifically the chief or possibly Jeremiah, since that would probably be quite a revamp of the River Point intersection.
Yes. So yes, the application was referred to the police department. We may have had some comments that were received, but nothing that really rose to the level of including in the packet tonight. Oftentimes they have more comments around kind of the exact orientation of buildings and things like that for response times. And then regarding the transportation concerns, yes, we have been in consultation with Jeremiah and with Kimco as well. So there is a separate process going on in the city right now. Basically, River Point Parkway is coming due on when the developer wants to turn it over to the city of Sheridan. So it's something we've already been looking at for River Point Parkway. And then with this project coming in, you know, and looking at having to kind of reconfigure that intersection right there, it's definitely something we've had a lot of conversations about. Was there something specific you had a question on for either of those?
No, just that they had reviewed and approved them. You know, it looked like it would be able to manage that amount of traffic since that would be the main entry point off of 285.
Yeah, and I do want to point out, so I think the developer, the city, and Kimco are kind of all in agreement that a roundabout would be the best solution there because it's compatible with everything else we have over at River Point. We all do acknowledge, though, that that would require some right-of-way acquisition on the four corners there. So if there was even really one party that didn't want to participate in that for some reason, it could make it more challenging to get built. But in the development agreement, which is on the agenda separately tonight, we have added some language and some flexibility that basically something needs to happen. And if it can't be a roundabout, maybe it could be a traffic signal. There's a number of, you know, different ways you could extend the median and close off left turns and direct everybody through the other roundabout. There's some other options as well, but I think the roundabout is the preferred option for all parties right now.
I have a question. How many campgrounds are still left in this area? You know, saying where these people can actually move their camping stuff. Is there any around here? Within Denver City, Sheridan city limit, where they can go? Because to my eye, this is the last camping ground in this area, right?
Yes, so there are no other campgrounds in the city of Sheridan. I think the in the letter from the family, I think there were 3 or 4 others identified in Metro Denver. But that's a question I think they're probably a little bit better to equipped.
And my other
Quick
question
answer.
is, do you know how many apartments are around this area that are being built? Do you know the number? How many down at the corner? How many across the street? And how many up on top of the hill? Do you know how many?
I do not. There's not really a great way to track that. I can say, you know, for comparison, the Loretto Heights project, they're looking at about 1,000 housing units up there. But that's a mixture of apartments, multifamily, attached products. Some of it's affordable, some of it's market rate, but that's about 1,000 units
There's
there.
374 that's being built down there. There's 100 and something that's being built on Oxford. No, 200 and something. Don't you think that's a lot of apartments? Did you look at the apartments on Broadway and Evans? How many is there? There's a lot. I think the city is getting too big as many apartments. There's, you know, we got to keep it where there's houses, you know, a lot of apartments, you know. I looked at the rent, it's about $1,400. That place down there, I figured it out. It's coming over 500 and some thousand, $6 million in 1 year to that place.
You have a question, Councilmember Fine?
I'm just saying, you know, of all the apartments, I think it's way too many. They're like this part, camping ground, there is no more around. So that's the last.
The time for questions for
That was
staff.
my question about, is there any more camping grounds around?
Okay. Anybody down at this end have questions? No? I wanted to confirm something that Councilmember Whitaker said. So is the net new number of housing units about 200? Is that right? Since we'd be losing about 162 and gaining 362, is that right?
Yeah, I'd say that's one way of looking at it. It's really hard to tell, you know, because people move into the RV park, they might stay a week, a month, 10 years. You know, it's really hard to know when somebody moves in exactly how long they're going to end up staying there.
Right.
So to say, and some of those spaces do turn over, right? You know, on a more weekly or monthly basis for folks that are passing through town. That's, you know, really been a question throughout this whole process is, you know, how do you best kind of quantify that? But I would say, yeah, you could look at it as approximately an increase overall of 200 units.
And then these might be more specific questions, and you can tell me if these aren't appropriate for zoning, but just things that I was curious about. So on the maps, that setback from 285, it's like 5 feet, but then on the east and west sides, it's like 30 feet. Why is that? Do you know?
On the official development plan?
Yeah, I think it was on that one.
Yeah, so one of the setbacks, so one of the challenges on the east side of the property are the overhead electric lines. So those, it really reduces the amount of buildable space on the other 16 acres. So remember, it's a 16-acre property, but once you take out the 1.5 acres for floodplain, and then, you know, the acres that are underneath the overhead electric lines, it's not really a 16-acre property that you can build on. So some of those adjustments were made to basically kind of shift some of that development away from those sensitive areas.
So you're saying that the setbacks were extended on the east and west then? Or made wider in those areas?
Yeah, and I think that's because the front setback tends to be the widest one. So if you're looking at your Bryant Street and your River Point Parkway entrances, is kind of like 2 front entrances almost.
All right, and then what is that trail going to look like along Bear Creek? Is it going to be fenced off on either side, or fences on both sides? I'm just curious because I don't think I saw that in here.
Sure. Are you talking about in terms of like the public being able to access it?
No, I mean, I know the public will be able to access it, but I'm just wondering, is it like screened by fencing on both sides, or is like the side by the golf course just like a railing or something? I don't-
Yeah, so the existing trail is on the south side, and is next to the golf course. So we have a separate project with Inglewood to hopefully look at moving that fence in a little bit and giving trail users some more room. I would say on the north side, you know, we're not far enough along into the site planning phase yet to say exactly what that would look like. We've been clear with the applicant, though, that we want it to look nice and finished and welcoming, but also not inviting for people to come off the trail and just, you know,
Walk into the
walk
apartment.
around the apartment complex. There's a number of ways you can do, you know, retaining walls, landscaping, decorative fences to make it look, you know, to really demarcate what is the public space versus what is the private space. And that's really the intention there, I think, in the official development plan.
Okay. And then just to kind of cover the electric lines, it looked like in the plans, those just go over parking and landscaping. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Anybody else have other questions?
I have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I hope I'm not setting anybody off. Is there a requirement to a certain percentage of those units that are affordable housing? Not just market rate?
No, so we don't have, so what you're referring to is like an inclusionary housing ordinance. We do not have one of those here in Sheridan. I know some surrounding cities, Denver has one, the city of Littleton passed one a couple of years ago, but there's still only a couple cities like that in Metro Denver. I think it's becoming a more common thing, but we don't have any requirements for that right now. So their intention and their proposal is fully market rate units.
I did have one more question. I forgot. This is, again, maybe more like for the site development, but I won't be here for that anyway, so I'm gonna ask now. Would there be adequate room and adequate facilities for recycling at this development?
Yes, and that is something that we're working with the applicant on. I think once we get more into the site planning for the project, that is when something like that would be addressed. But we definitely want to make sure there's, you know, equal space for both recycling and trash containers.
Okay.
Just in line with our overall sustainability objectives.
Okay. Anybody think of any more questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
What happens to all them trees down there? They're just gonna cut them down and everything?
So I can let the applicant speak more to that. So one of the things that they would have to work on if their rezoning is approved is looking at like a tree survey to basically come in and look at the size of the trees, the quality, their condition, and different items like that. I do know there's a number of cottonwoods down on the property. Many of those, and this is just speaking from our experience with what we've seen along Bear Creek, they're there are several invasive species down there, especially along Bear Creek, and then some of the cottonwoods, once they get to the end of their life, they really become a safety hazard. So they take up a lot of water, and when, you know, you go through a drought or something, you know, chunks of them can just kind of fall off. So yes, the intent would be if there are trees that can be kept and integrated into the proposal, we definitely want to do that. But we can't guarantee that all trees would be kept.
Another question, what about all the wildlife, like wild animals and everything? What's gonna happen to them down there? Like there's probably deers, foxes, birds, and with all that development, is it gonna impact those?
I'm not a wildlife biologist. I think some of those aspects were addressed in the engineer's memo, but I mean, we're not expecting that there would be really any wildlife to be disturbed down there. If anything, it would be within the Bear Creek Trail corridor, which is currently under private ownership because Flying Saucer owns the channel on the banks of Bear Creek. But once, you know, dedicated over to the city, that would be kind of our responsibility to manage, along with the Parks and Rec District. Really, the wildlife that I'm most familiar with down along Bear Creek are the beavers that we occasionally find down there, but I'm not aware of any deer in the area.
Okay, I was just wondering. Okay.
Any more questions?
No.
Okay. Right, then now we'll hear from the applicant. Thank you, Andrew. Please identify yourself and you can begin.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. As stated, I am Heath Kennedy, and I am a Senior Development Manager with Garrett Companies. First, I would like to take the time to extend a thank you to Mr. Raggi and Mr. Ari and the entire City of Sheridan staff who have spent countless hours working on this project. We have several people in attendance here and online this evening for both the Garrett Companies and the property owner's family who are part of the project team to answer questions. The Garrett Companies has been working with Lucille Turney, the property owner, since 2022 to acquire the property. I wish Lucille could be here tonight. However, she is 94 years old. I did have the pleasure of meeting Lucille in her home a year before we had finalized our purchase agreement. She had many interesting stories to tell about her life and her family's legacy with the Flying Saucer property. Tonight, you will hear from Lucille's granddaughter, Anne, who graciously put her career on hold to step in and assist in managing the park with her mother, Donna, and aunt in 2023. Sadly, Donna passed in March of 2024, leaving Anne to step in full-time. We're here this evening because the family has decided to cease operations of the RV park and has elected to sell their property to us. Now, before we tell our story, we should let the family tell theirs. I invite Anne Whipple to the podium.
Hello, City of Sheridan, Madam Mayor. Over 75 years ago, Floyd Ratliff, my great-grandfather, was suffering from some medical conditions, and he and his wife, Ruth, my great-grandmother, were looking for a means to support their family while also tending to his conditions. Following the Great Depression and World War II, trailer courts were becoming more common across the country, and Floyd and Ruth saw an opportunity. When the property was purchased and the park constructed, there were only about 25 tenants. Through funds generated throughout the park, through the park and other business ventures, Floyd and Ruth were able to expand the park, offering approximately 90 spaces by the early 1960s. Floyd passed away in 1970 and Ruth in 1994. Keeping with the family legacy and following their retirement from day-to-day operations at the park, Floyd and Ruth passed down the family business to their 4 children: Melvin, Alvin, commonly known as Bud, Lucille, and Maggie. At the time the park was transitioned, neither Maggie nor Melvin desired to participate in the family business, and as a result, Lucille and her brother Bud managed the park's operations. Since its opening in 1949, the park has been run by 5 generations of family members. First by Floyd and Ruth, then by Bud and Lucille, alongside 2 of Lucille's granddaughters, 2 two of Lucille's daughters, two granddaughters, and one great-grandson. In 2022, Lucille and Bud decided that it was time to sell the park, as both were getting older, 98 for Bud and 91 for Lucille, and still working at the park in some capacity, either on site or in the corporate office. Additionally, overall park operations were getting increasingly challenging, and they felt as though their children and grandchildren were bound by their obligations to the park and its tenants. Only the family members knew how to operate the park and the manner that it had been operating for the prior 73 years, and as tenants and staff came and went, it was becoming more difficult to self-manage. Consequently, Lucille and Bud entered into a listing agreement with CBRE, a national brokerage firm, to market the park for sale to a third party. They both recognized that what had initially been a short-term means for their parents to support them and their children had transitioned into a 73-year journey of providing affordable accommodations to the city of Sheridan, a journey that, while incredibly beneficial to the community, had run its course and began to cause significant strain on the remaining family members operating the park. Before Lucille and Bud could formally enter into a purchase agreement for the sale of the park, Bud passed away at the age of 98, leaving the sale in limbo. Moreover, following Bud's passing and the settling of his estate, which became divisive and trying on the remaining family members, market conditions changed. Lucille, the park's sole owner, waited an additional 2 years before finally making the ultimate decision to end the family's legacy and release her remaining children and grandchildren from the real obligations and sacrifices required for the park's continued operation. During this 2-year period and up to this date, Lucille's daughter, my mom, Donna, who passed away in March of 2024, her 2 children, my sister Mary and myself, Lucille's grandchildren, have been handling the park's day-to-day operations, with myself, Anne, living on site to ensure that the park is maintained and its tenants remain as safe as possible. This has been at significant cost and strain. The below market rental rate the park's tenants were paying and continue to pay is unsustainable, as regulations are changing and landlord-tenant issues can no longer be managed on a face-to-face handshake basis. Still, to this day, the family has struggled and continues to struggle with the decision to sell the park and end the family's legacy, as well as ending an era of providing a safe, quiet community for tenants that the city of Sheridan has come to know. This decision was not made lightly, nor without significant research, time, and deliberation as to what the family wanted to see happen to its unicorn. The family believes that the highest and best use of the land would be to have a developer add to the value of the land and the community by almost doubling the amount of housing available to the city, housing that is desperately in demand. The family also recognizes that this new housing will cause the displacement of existing tenants who will need to find new places to live following the park sale. What can't be ignored is that 5 generations of Ratliffs have provided a service to this community of Sheridan, and it is now time for the family to focus on serving their own needs and seeing what the future holds for them, separate and apart from the park. It is also very important to note that the family has no intentions of continuing to operate the park. After all of these years, they are tired, and Lucille's desire at 94 years old is to release her family from this burden. There is no alternate position. Regarding city staff's prior comments, which were discussed in the Planning Commission hearing, ownership had the following responses. The initial neighborhood meeting was intended to give the current tenants a broad understanding of the approval process and timeline. Staff noted in its comments that current residents were concerned with the lack of clarity around a notice period for having to relocate. Overall, timing of the relocation of existing tenants is fluid and directly tied to the city's review of the rezoning application, which is not something that either the city either the ownership or the developer can dictate. It was made very clear in the neighborhood meeting that tenants would be given ample notice and opportunities to participate in the application and approval process. Tenants were told then that they would receive 2 separate notices of both the Planning Commission and City Council hearings to allow them an opportunity to attend and participate in the process. Also, the developer's representative specifically stated that the earliest it could close on the purchase of the park was in the spring of 2026. This is no less than 9 months following the date of the initial neighborhood meeting. Staff comments mentioned recent state legislation regarding the sale and transaction of mobile home parks in the state of Colorado and asked for the ownership's comment on the same. In response, as was communicated to the tenants in the initial neighborhood meeting, the park does not fall within Colorado's Mobile Home Park Act. Ownership specifically engaged counsel, who is present tonight, to analyze and opine on this topic. Staff asked the family to provide details as to how the proposed rezoning will not risk the displacement of existing tenants at the park. The family has experienced much tenant relocation over its years as the park's owner-operator. There is a constant rotation of tenants at the park, including traveling nurses, contractors, and laborers that are only in Denver metro area for a limited period. Some former tenants have moved out of the state to live closer to their family and the resources they can provide. Others have sold their recreational vehicles, sometimes with the park's assistance, to move into alternative accommodations. Some have even fulfilled their dreams of wanting to travel the country in their recreational vehicles. Following Bud's passing and the transfer of his interest in the park to Lucille, ownership has been very clear to the tenants that tenancy are not long-term and have ensured that the tenants continue to enter leases, whether daily, weekly, or month to month, which has always been the park's course of action, that only permit tenants to occupy the park for a 6-month maximum. Unfortunately, there will be some displacement, and ownership and the developer are committed in assisting in the transition, and in fact, ownership has done so for many years. For the last 76 years, the Ratliff family has been providing affordable, below-market rent to tenants in the city of Sheridan. The family has received no direct subsidies from the city of Sheridan or the state of Colorado. The family should not be penalized for its years of providing accommodations that may not now or in the future exist elsewhere. As detailed through this narrative, the operation of this type of facility is not glamorous and comes at a great mental and emotional cost. The family's sacrifice and commitment to the community over the last 3/4 of a century has come without fanfare, recognition, or outside compensation. Their efforts through the sale of the property to an experienced residential developer will provide another generation of individuals housing in the city of Sheridan and should also not be ignored. Allowing them the opportunity to step away and start the next chapter of their lives should neither be controversial nor objectionable. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Lucille is a businesswoman. She has a strong desire to settle her estate. As you heard, there have been unfortunate family circumstances which have delayed this. Before we ended our meeting last year, Lucille made it very clear she wanted us to close on this property during her lifetime and lift the burden that this business has become to her family in recent years. As noted in June, we provided notice of and held a neighborhood meeting in this room to discuss impending sale and the rezoning application. Representatives from approximately 8 of the 162 RV spaces attended. At this meeting, notice was given that the park was under contract. Closing in June of 2026 was anticipated, and all tenants would need to vacate before this date. I want to take a couple of minutes and talk about the Garrett Companies. We are a full-service multifamily development, construction, and property management team. Founded over 10 years ago in Greenwood, Indiana, The Garrett Companies has grown to over 350 employees with a major presence here in Colorado. In fact, 40% of us live here in Colorado and work in our tech center headquarters and the Front Range apartment communities that we develop. We currently have 12 communities under construction with 7 in Colorado. Of the 16 currently occupied and under management, 9 are here as well. And our pipeline of 16 new deals has half of those located in Colorado. Our award-winning culture spans across 20,000 plus apartments in 22 states delivered to date. The next 3 slides are typical of our community architecture, amenities, and interiors. As you heard from the staff report, our project aligns with Sheridan's comprehensive plan and helps the city meet its housing needs. This aerial depicts the property in context with the surrounding area. Noting the proximity to River Point Shopping Center, future residents will have excellent pedestrian and vehicular access to support the numerous businesses and retailers, along with adding to the city of Sheridan's sales tax base. This rendering provides a sense of how the proposed project will transform the property into a quality multifamily community with approximately 362 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units in 7 4-story buildings. Amenities will include an integrated clubhouse and leasing center, along with a resort-style pool and spa and active outdoor spaces. Our marketing department will be incorporating commemorative components into the branding of this project to continue the legacy of the Flying Saucer, including the park's iconic Flying Saucer metal art piece. Off-site improvements include upgrading the existing deceleration lane on Hamden at South Bryant Street, improving the main entrance road and the intersection of such with River Point Parkway. The next step in the process will require preparation of a site development plan and plat to further refine the design. This platting process will also require Planning Commission and City Council review and approval. As part of the project, we are proposing to dedicate nearly 2 acres of Bear Creek and a new 8-foot concrete trail to the city, along with a new bridge over the creek near South Bryant Street to connect residents to the existing trail network. I'll touch on the trail briefly here to hopefully answer your question. At this point in time, we are not proposing a fence. We feel like that is kind of a separation barrier. We would like to have it more open and inviting, so we're planning to have separation points with landscaping and then ensure that we have points of access from this community to what I would call as a spur trail, not the main trail, which is on the south side of Bear Creek. This is typical of our proposed architecture. Building materials will consist of brick or stone, hardy siding or board and batten with composition shingles and pitched roofs. These images reflect the typical quality and resort style amenities offered at our communities. As Mr. Raggi mentioned, the current zoning is business on the west half and business light industrial on the east half. The allowed uses for the property are office, retail, and industrial in nature, which conflict with the city's desire for multifamily residential. Because of Sheridan's desire for additional housing and support in changing the use of this property, as clearly documented in the comprehensive plan, we decided to pursue the proposed rezoning and redevelopment of the property. Several goals, objectives, and action items within the comprehensive plan align with our project, the primary being multifamily housing. As Mr. Raggi described in detail, Sheridan's housing needs assessment aligns with the plan's goal of ensuring an appropriate supply of housing is provided in Sheridan. This property's redevelopment can capitalize on providing such housing. The heart of this rezoning proposal will address the city's goals and objectives of the River Point neighborhood. There are 3 very specific items highlighted here. The first is a direct reference to the Flying Saucer and its location being ideal for multifamily residential development. Second, the city's desire to encourage multifamily residential development along Hamden and River Point. And third, the action item of working with the Flying Saucer owner to incorporate permanent residential homes. This undoubtedly shows the city's desire to rezone the property and support multifamily housing development as the primary use. Additional actions, goals, and objectives relate to improving the curb appeal along 285. Part of your question on the 5-foot setback, there is a very significant landscape buffer that already exists in the right-of-way. And so we felt that utilized with enhancing the vegetation there and on our property and incorporating detached garages to create a buffer would be sufficient. We will also be improving the natural habitat along Bear Creek, which this project will provide enhanced landscaping in both locations, along with an expansion of the Bear Creek Trail network. Lastly, the comprehensive plan clearly identifies the property as undergoing a significant change in use, especially to support the businesses of Sheridan's retail crown jewel, that is River Point Shopping Center, shown here in red. Sheridan's housing needs assessment projects a need of 409 units, especially for apartments based on the lack of projects in the past decade and available land suitable for this scale of development. Table 14 of the report shows the only recent apartment project as the Bonsai Apartments, which serves the affordable income market. Our project will provide additional housing units to fill Sheridan's demand. As noted in the study, 16% of the city's housing is apartments, which is a lower than average number. Approval of this project would pull Sheridan's housing diversity closer to equilibrium. We are often asked about rental rates. While we don't have exact unit sizes or rates currently, this project is targeted to provide rates for all 362 units below 90% of the area median income, or AMI, and 2/3 below 80% of the AMI. We all define workforce housing a little different. How we at the Garrett Companies define workforce is in these types of jobs: medical services, trades, construction, education, government, military, retail, the restaurant industry. We feel there's a need for housing for these individuals in Sheridan, and our market research shows a strong demand to supply 100% of the units under 90% AMI to serve working residents. We provide a lot of workforce housing in our communities across the country and in Colorado. We analyzed 3 of our Denver metro communities and correlated that over 250 workers at this proposed community would fit these occupation types that I mentioned here. This project will also allow more people to live and work in Sheridan, especially those employed at the River Point Shopping Center. As evidenced in the housing assessment, only 1% of people who work in Sheridan actually live here. There are several government offices, schools, medical facilities, and hospitals and major employers in the surrounding community whose workforce could qualify for housing here. For reference, an individual making $20 an hour could qualify for a $1,700 per month apartment. This is within the rental range of our typical one-bedroom apartments. We at the Garrett Companies love an off-market deal more than anybody else. We are constantly approaching landowners when we find prospective markets meeting our criteria. For this site, however, it was anything but off-market, making it a major challenge for us to compete against many other companies. As mentioned, CBRE was selected by Lucille, Bud, and their families as the listing broker due to their local, national, and international outreach. As the largest commercial real estate firm in the world, they wanted maximum exposure to commercial and residential real estate developers, owners, and users. As a firm, CBRE currently has specialty service lines that cover every asset class in commercial real estate and have the relationships required for such exposure. Further, CBRE has specialty service lines that include retail and manufactured housing and recreational vehicle communities. The Flying Saucer was exposed to these service lines through CBRE's extensive network. The initial marketing efforts in the second quarter of 2022 was broadcast to over 10,000 prospective buyers and broker contacts. Over 3,000 of those people actually viewed the email, and of that, 18 offers were received. Due to Bud's passing, the family instructed CBRE to pull the property off the market. When it was relaunched in 2024, these efforts were sent out to nearly 8,000 buyer and broker contacts, of which 2,500 viewed and 10 offers were received. Of all of these offers, none of them were RV park operators. From the onset, we knew assistance for some residents to relocate was likely, and this was voiced and heard at the neighborhood meeting and planning commission meeting. Assistance can mean a lot of different things and may come in many different forms. As such, the Garrett Companies is committed to a relocation assistance phase, and we continue to conduct interviews with qualified housing relocation consultants. We intend to survey, scope, and connect resources or services tailored to a tenant's individual relocation needs and determine the appropriate scope, which may consist of identifying the level of service, resourcing physical and mechanical needs to RVs, tiny homes, and other structures to make ready for and coordinate a plan to remove off the property, resourcing RV housing availability and vacancies locally or regionally, resourcing alternative housing options and assistance with housing applications, resourcing care management and social service needs based on circumstances, creating an individualized tenant action plan as needed, follow-up assistance with tenants within a 60 and 30-day period prior to closure, assisting with state and local compliance documentation between owner and tenants for final closure. Mr. Raggi went through the approval criteria already, so I won't go through these in detail. Also, our attorney requires us to include these in our presentation. But to reiterate, this project fulfills and exceeds the standards for a rezoning request. This concludes our presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. We want to do right by Sheridan with an attractive, compliant project and do right by the people who will live here and the people who will need help relocating by June of 2026. We appreciate your support and ask for your approval tonight. We look forward to proceeding with the site development plan application and hearings early next year.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for the applicant at this time?
I do.
Go ahead.
So it's been about 9 months since the first hearing, right? Since the tenants got to know about the sale of this property.
That was in June.
Okay. How many tenants have left since this process started?
I don't know if I could say how many tenants have left since the process has started. I currently have 40 vacant spaces. Some of that is people who have left because of the sale. Some of that is daily, weekly, that we do during the summer. Some of that is also because we have a lot of people that are here for different reasons, and their reason for being here for 1 month or 2 months is up. I do know that there have been several people that have left due to this because they don't agree with what the family is wanting to do, and they have left without paying rent and leaving us with significant expenses.
One more question. Will there, in this proposed use of land, will there still be any RV storage?
No.
I have one. How many have you helped to relocate so far?
We have not gotten into that phase. So our proposal is, if approved tonight, we would engage a housing relocation consultant to finalize a plan and put together budgets and make a determination on how we will assist. And then that plan would get implemented as we get closer to closing in June of 2026.
And that budget would be what, your budget for helping people to relocate?
Correct.
And what, do you guys have any ideas of what you're committed to so far?
This plan is still in the works. We're trying to figure out what the needs are, what the options are, and take those recommendations from our consultant.
Go ahead.
Excuse me. So it was commented that the maximum was 6-month lease. Is that correct? And so we've received some letters that state there's residents that have been there much longer. Can you speak on that?
In January of 2024, when the family had decided that they were going to be selling the park, but they didn't know when, they didn't know how, they didn't know what that process was going to look like. We made the decision at that time that no one would be allowed to rent a space on the property without being given advance notice that their term could only be 6 months. Some people have been able to stay 11 months, but we do require that the people vacate the premises after the 6 months or after the 11 months. And it is very clearly stated at the time that they move in how much time they are given. Prior to January 1st of 2024, we did not have a maximum length of time. However, our lease has always stated, even when my great grandmother owned it, it was a 30-day month-to-month tenancy with an option for renewal, provide that you pay your rent before 12 noon on the due date. Does that answer your question?
I have a question for her. Did you ever offer the people that stay there to buy the property before the broker?
That is not my opportunity, nor is it my right.
But I'm just asking, did you to see if they wanted to buy it to stay, keep it as an RV park?
That is not my opportunity, nor is it my right. That is up to my grandmother who owns the property
Mhm.
and my uncle who owned the property prior to his passing.
But now since they're gone, have you decided, say, hey, let's see if they,
I am not the owner of the property. My grandmother is still alive and still very much involved in this process.
oh, okay,
And as my letter stated, we are doing exactly what her wishes are.
okay.
Other questions? No? Okay. Before we begin our public comment on this application, we need to make the audience aware of the rules for commenting this evening. All speakers must register to speak this evening with one of our staff members. Can you all raise your hand in case anybody else needs to sign up? Okay. Thank you. All speakers, so if you still need to sign up, they can help you get on the list. All speakers must be physically present in the council chambers to provide their comments. Online comments via Zoom will not be allowed. Each speaker will be limited to no more than 3 minutes at the podium. Speakers may not yield their time to another speaker. If someone wishes to provide their comments in Spanish, they'll do so continuously for up to 3 minutes, and then Andrea, our interpreter, will play the recording back for everyone to hear in English. As a reminder to the audience, the intent of public comment is for the public to provide statements to City Council to consider in making their decision. It's not to discuss their comments with the mayor and council or to ask questions of the City Council. However, the City Council may ask speakers clarifying questions if something is unclear. Now we'll begin our public comment period. Our first speaker is
Mayor, before you begin
Yeah.
public comment, if I could just clarify something.
Yes.
And I know folks have been noticing, we've been having some issues with the monitors up here. The live stream is actually still going on out to folks that are watching that at home or wherever they might be. It's just with these internal monitors that we're having some issues with that. So that it's still being live streamed out to people that are wanting to watch it from wherever they are outside or remotely. All of our meetings are recorded, correct? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, now we'll begin our public comment period. Our first speaker is,
Dawn Shepherd is our first speaker.
thank you. So Dawn,
And Madam Mayor, Deputy City Clerk Reagan is going to run the timer for us.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so please come up to the podium, state your name and your address for the record, and then you can begin.
Thank you. Dawn Shepherd, 6465 South Arapahoe Road, Littleton, Colorado. And why a Littleton resident is here is for 40 years, I was Housing Authority Director, first in Littleton, and my last 10 years as director was in Inglewood. And so we administered your voucher program for the city of Sheridan. And I became very aware of and very proud of the fact that your council, your citizens, and your community was involved with all of its residents. If they were low income or higher income, you were concerned about them and their way of life. When I heard about the flying saucer and knew that there were going to be so many people affected that we're not going to be able to afford the property that's going to be built. And I guess I'm a little skeptical about the help that can be offered by a professional relocation specialist. There has to be money involved for you to relocate. And there have to be opportunities for housing that is affordable. The housing that's going to be created is not affordable for most of the people that live in the flying saucer. So I heard your invocation and thought, you have an opportunity. It would be unique for the council not to go along with the Planning Commission's rezoning. I know that. It would be very courageous. But you have that opportunity to show the people that live there that you understand and really care. So I wanted to at least take an opportunity to ask you to consider that. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Who's our next speaker?
Next, we have Tina Olfest.
Come on up to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Tina Olfest, and I live at the Flying Saucer RV Park, 2500 West Hampden Avenue. I am here tonight to urge you to vote no on the proposed rezoning of the Flying Saucer RV property. With over 2,000 units currently under development or completed since 2023 in just Englewood and Sheridan alone, this area does not need more market rate apartments. That includes the Hobby Lobby and the Safeway that just closed up. The average household income in Sheridan is about $58,500, $29,763 for individual median income. A market rate apartment is more than 30% of that income and leaving the average resident about $6,500 short of being able to afford even the smallest average apartment rent. This development will not help our families and current residents who are struggling with affordability. It will only contribute to the already saturated luxury market. The fate of the current residents is the most important moral issue before you. The idea that a consultant provided by the developer will solve this crisis is simply inadequate. The 3 other RV parks in the Denver metro area lack the space to absorb this closure. They also impose strict age, size, and amperage qualifications that will disqualify many of the current RVs, not to mention the higher rent and the fact that they do not accept tiny homes. Furthermore, many Flying Saucer residents are retirees, veterans, and disabled veterans on fixed income or are already in financial crisis. They are living paycheck to paycheck. They do not have the thousands of dollars required for apartment security deposits, first month's and last month's rent. What these vulnerable residents need is direct financial assistance for relocation, not a token consultant. The proposed project would replace 162 RV sites with 362 apartments. Common sense and basic math dictate that multiplying the number of units by over 200% will drastically increase traffic congestion in this area. We have spoken with many who live in the Sheridan community, and the message has been clear. Sheridan does not want more apartment buildings. If the core issue is that the park no longer fits the city's desired look, why not encourage the current owners to sell to one of the 4 interested parties that we have personally spoken to, who would keep the RV park and commit to the necessary upgrades? Council, this is more than aesthetics or maximizing density. It is about compassion, infrastructure, and honoring the residents who call Sheridan home right now. I urge you to vote no on this rezoning and allow the current residents to keep their homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's our next speaker?
Patricia Burnett.
Please come to the podium and state your name and address.
Sorry, I didn't think I'd be called. Patricia Burnett. I live at 4545 South Monaco Street in Denver. And I am here to support our Steve and Tina. Steve is a member of the Rotary Club of Inglewood. I'm a longtime member. Steve is recent
A
president.
little closer to the
current
microphones.
Treasurer. Sorry. And we, Steve and Tina live in a tiny home in the RV park. There's no place in metropolitan Denver for them to go. So what this means is that they're thinking about moving to the Western Slope. I'll lose my friends, so I'm here to talk about my friends. I also was here for the Planning Commission meeting. I wish this whole side of the room was filled with flying saucer residents, and their stories were, you could hear the desperation in their voices. And I wish you could have heard that. And the variety of people, different occupations and situations of life. It was very moving. They're your constituents. They're the people you were elected to take care of. And so I offer you that. I would urge you to vote no. You don't have to vote for this development. You don't have to. You get a choice. And I hope you would err on the side of thinking about these people who are living there in the park. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's up next?
Bob Fritz.
Bob, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Bob Fritz. I live at 6668 South Cherry Way in Centennial, Colorado. I'm a native of the Denver area, and I've driven past that countless times over the years. And when I found out, and I am a member of the Rotary Club, of which Steve is also a member. And when I found out about what was happening, I wanted to do anything I could to try and help them out. Because with this proposed project, it will just, there's 162 spaces that may or may not be full. There's 162 spaces, which equates to over 300 people. And the new development has been said before, but it's 362. So they're only gaining 200 housing units. And if this proposal goes through, then those people do not have a definite way or a different place to go. And I know that in the small house situation, it's very expensive to move that unit. And I doubt that the developers are going to want to help pay for that. But the cities right now, many cities are trying to provide more affordable housing. And this is getting rid of over 300 people, which very likely will become homeless. My business takes me all over the city, and I rarely stop at an intersection where there isn't some homeless person asking for a handout. And we just can't continue doing that. We can't make more people homeless. I don't think any of those people can afford to live in these new units. And if they have 4 interested parties, that's what they should be pursuing. And understand your need to sell it. But if there are 4 interested parties, that's what they should be pursuing, and try to work something out there where they can continue to do that. People drive through this town and they use this space for their RV and then move on. And that's not being replaced. And campsites, it was made clear tonight that that's not being replaced. There is a good alternative, and I would encourage this council to turn this down and let them take the other option that was talking to those 4 interested parties. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Terry.
Eric. Please state your name and address for the record. Make sure that mic is adjusted back down.
I am short. Hello, my name is Terry, and I've been a tenant at the Flying Saucer Park off and on since 2023. My latest return was in July of this year. I'm here tonight to show my support of this generational family that is given to the community in the way of providing affordable temporary housing to Sheridan for over 75 years. That's quite impressive. Most businesses close and go on a regular basis. That alone, I think, should warrant this family be given the keys to the city for all they've given. But as heard in the last couple of meetings, there has been opposition to this rezoning moving forward by a handful of Parks residents who are pushing back on this. As I watched the last meeting online and heard the complaints as to why they shouldn't be allowed to rezone, such as financial hardship or not given enough time to find new accommodations, is not true. To counter that, when I arrived in July of 25, the park staff informed me that if I chose to stay there, to keep in mind that I'd only be allowed to stay a maximum of 5 months. I agreed to their terms, and as a side note, I started volunteering in the office for a short time, and I heard phone calls coming in daily, and these people were being told the same exact things that I was told. This allowed me ample time to find accommodations, and which I have found. It's about 45 minutes from the park, granted, but it was within my budget, and I have found that, and it's worked for me and my family. My family is forever grateful to the Flying Saucer Park and the family. The opportunities that my family's been able to achieve due to this do not go unnoticed or unappreciated. Thank you.
Next, we have Mike.
Right, please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Mike. I live at 2500 West Hampton. And I come before you today. Thank you for your time, by the way. The ability to have a place to have our voice and a forum for you guys to listen to it and appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Can you get a little bit closer to the mic, please, to make sure our interpreter can hear you?
Sure. And then, of course, I know your time is a resource, but I don't usually get involved with things like this. This is, I just pass through and then I'm gone, and I don't really have any skins in this game. But the residents of the park seem to me like they're sending out false information to the tenants, other tenants in there, and it's causing a panic to the point it would be like yelling a fire in a crowded theater. There was a post on my windshield, and it had a very concerning statement to it. So I took it to the managers, and we went over it, and it was actually false, and someone had generated this document and stuck it on my windshield. And the only thing true about it is they said that this meeting is today, and it's at 7 o'clock. The other information on there that she can convey is not true. And I don't think in this time and age, you should be creating panic like this. If those residents are disgruntled, they use this forum to get their message across. And I don't believe this was very helpful for anybody. I'm a retired veteran, and in my business plan, because of the economic conditions of everything around here, I'm ready to come out of retirement if that's what it takes to live my lifestyle. As all of you know, it's very difficult. But I don't think that to take a rental property and lay claim onto it for your life is not a good plan. And it's just the way I feel about it. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Who's our next up?
Meredith Long.
Come on up and please state your name and address for the record.
All right, my name is Meredith Long, 2500 West Hampden.
I would like to just start off with the invocation that you guys opened the meeting with of working with the golden rule, which essentially is to treat others the way that you would want to be treated based on empathy and compassion. And it seems that Ann Whipple, according to AnnWhippleRealEstate.com, she also has my golden rule. I adhere to the highest standards of ethics and integrity. If the situation is a win-win for all, it's a no deal. Well, you know what? I'm going to say shame on you, Sheridan, and I'm really sad. But this room was filled. We needed more seats the last time we were here. But the reason that people aren't here today is because they feel defeated. By finding out more information of how long this process has been going on since the comprehensive plan of 2015, they feel as though the city of Sheridan has already made their claim as to what they're going to do. They're also very scared of retaliation. If you drive through the park nowadays, you're going to see many lots are open. And according to Ann, that's 40. This is not because of the lack of need. It's because the Flying Saucer mobile home park has been removing people, not removing rents, and evicting people, giving them letters from different lawyers. People are worried about speaking up for fear of retaliation. In the 10-1 presentation, Ann mentioned having a large debt to pay. The family did, excuse me. Well, it seems, why would you take people out and remove that income that seems so vital for you? Very counterintuitive. I'm able to speak up because I have that ability. I'm able to work. I'm physically capable. I have many years ahead of me to be able to create savings. A lot of these people are senior citizens, disabled veterans, you name it, fixed income, the list goes on. So shame on Sheridan for working directly with one family with significant financial ties to the community, as opposed to the hundreds of residents that are being displaced. Shame on Sheridan for not doing your due diligence to inform residents of this Flying Saucer mobile home park what his rezoning meant and when the neighborhood meeting at the end of June would take place. This was legally required. The only correspondence that I have received are all from the RV park are always taped to my front door. These are all of them, right? I keep them. Electric bills, communications. Are we going to have a community garage sale? That's the only form of communication. Actually, back in July of 23, June 23, they actually raised my rent. I don't have a mailbox there, right? They still took the time to tape that letter to my door because they legally had to. So why didn't the city of Sheridan do that? Okay. Excuse me. Let's see. Under Colorado revised statute, my landlord had to give me 60 days written notice of raising my rent.
That's time.
Thank you.
Next is Leo Perez.
Please come up and state your name and address.
Hello, I'm a musician, so I know about mics. First, I want to thank Mr. Camacho there, bringing up some really good points. And that was one of my points also. that-
I'm sorry, sir. We need your name and address for
Oh,
the record,
Leo
please.
Perez, sorry.
And address for the record, please.
Sorry?
Your address, home address for the record.
I live at, on Space 77 at Flying Saucer.
Thank you.
Sorry, I get anxious here. That there are no other places for RVs. There's another, it's basically a mobile home park and they do have some spaces, but they're very, very few. And I had to wait 3 months to get into space, to get into Flying Saucer. And my son also lives there. So I don't know where the so-called where you're going to put anybody because there are no places. I've looked at some places in Golden maybe, but they're only there for the summer, so you can't go anywhere. I've lived all over the state. I'm a technician and I'm also old. I'm 78 years old and I'm still working. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm going to Steamboat Springs to do a job. And it's going to be like a hotel. Okay. And my point is that I am from New York City in the Bronx. Okay. I'm a legal alien who are from the Caribbean, and it's the Dominican Republic. And we were poor, very poor. I'm talking dirt floors poor. And my parents came to New York when I was 4. And I said, the Bronx, is kind of iffy. And the one thing that I don't like about cities now is the density. Right now, people here in this park are so nice. These people are someone you can talk to their neighbors. Okay. I've seen a lot of the houses, a lot of the apartments around Colorado, all over. If you notice that most of the crime and strife comes from bigger cities, and Sheridan is such a nice place. And I wouldn't like for Sheridan to become a Denver or New York or Chicago. And you have something unique here. It may seem like just an RV park, but it's unique because there are no other places like this.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Next, we have Elizabeth Wilhelm.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and present I'm again not a
Can you please
member.
state your name and address for the
I'm
record?
Elizabeth Wilhelm, 3750 South Lincoln Street, Englewood. So I was starting to say I'm another person
you.
that doesn't live in the park, but I'm here because I'm very, very passionate about what Steve and Tina are going through. I'm another member of our Englewood Rotary Club, and what's happening with them is very disheartening because that goes against all of what we think about what the Rotary is, and that's providing service to people, just like your invocation said, helping those less fortunate. What this is creating is more of a problem where we're really trying to work with people that we had a great meeting with the chamber with helping with food insecurities, but this is creating more housing insecurities. And wouldn't it be great if the Garrett Company and the city of Sheridan became known as people who really cared about people, that aren't displacing them, not making them more homeless, but helping them to be able to sustain them. When we put that beautiful picture up of the apartments, people in the planning meeting said, oh, that's beautiful, but that's not where they want to live. They want to live in their RV. They don't want to live in an apartment that they can't afford, because it isn't true that if you make $20 an hour and you work for 40 hours a week, you can afford this. Many people in the planning committee that came are vets or people that are retired that can no longer afford this. So is it just for the Garrett Company, is your company just doing it for profit, or can you take those apartments that you've already designed and bring them down to a lower design where people can afford it? And what my feeling is what are we doing for people to afford housing? I went to bed that night after this and I thought, how can people go to bed knowing that they're displacing people, or all of these people that are worrying about where they're going to live? That's causing more health situations for them to have this kind of stress. So I just say, what are we doing? Our bottom line is to help that person, to help the human being. That's my concern, is how are we helping people? Like Mr. Ernie, I'm sorry, I'm not going to say your last name because I'd butcher it, but like you asked, there are no more RV parks around. My friends are going to have to move to Montrose, and we're going to be losing them in our community, and they're very valued people in our community. So no, my sister and her husband have chosen to make RV traveling a part of their retirement, and there is nowhere in the Denver metro area that they could park their RV. So why are we not saying, let's make this a better environment for them to live, instead of displacing people who don't want to live in an apartment? We want to live in our own house. So thank you for listening.
Last, we have Steve Olfest, unless there's any other speakers that would like to sign up at this time.
As Steve comes to the podium, if there's anybody else who wants to speak, we do have that opportunity. If anyone else wants to speak, you can still get in the list. I don't see anybody. Okay.
My name is Steve Olfest, 2500 West Hampton Avenue, lot 24. Go ahead and go to the next slide here. And do we want this in our community? If we close an RV park with no RVs, no other RV places to go, this is what happens to communities that don't have places for RVs to go. Next slide, please. The Flying Saucer has a rich history in this community and of providing an alternative way for people to live. Why don't we continue that legacy for the city of Community and set an example for not only this city, metro area of Denver, but also for our entire state and nation? Continue to the next slide, please. What are we doing with a beautiful park with lots of mature trees in it, lots of alternative housing? We're turning it into an apartment complex like we see so many other places around this metro area. Next slide, please. So we're turning what we just saw into something like this. We can go so many places around the city and see this. Why not set an example for the city of Sheridan and have a beautiful RV park to continue the legacy for many years to come? Next slide, please. Here are some examples. We could, as we've already pointed out, there are multiple alternative buyers that would love to turn this park into an RV resort for many years to come and put the additional revenue and resources into it to keep it an example for the community. Next slide, please. And here's some examples of one of those developers, RV park developers, that has redeveloped many other RV park tiny house communities around this state. But there's nothing like this in the city of Denver. Next slide, please. So let's all vote with our conscience, vote with our hearts, and deny the proposal for rezoning and keep this as a shining example for the city of Sheridan in our community for many years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll give one last call if there's anybody else who'd like to speak to council. I don't see anyone. So I have, this is an opportunity for the applicant to provide any comments they have in response to the public testimony. Please remind us of your name if you don't mind.
Madam Mayor, David Foster, again, Land Use Council for the applicant tonight, and appreciate the opportunity, of course, that you've all afforded to your constituents to have this conversation, and even some folks who aren't your constituents, because this is an important issue. Housing is a very important issue. And sometimes, people don't see municipal boundaries quite like you all do. Councilman, you speak of the myriad of other homes that are being built, maybe over at Loretto or maybe in Inglewood, but tonight we're dealing with Sheridan, and we're dealing strictly with your municipal boundary. And in that context, one other thing that we're not dealing with, and you can't possibly sit in a meeting like this and not have compassion for people's real life stories. And if you do sit in a meeting like this and you don't have compassion, that might say a lot about who we are as people. But what's really important tonight is to recognize that your decision tonight isn't to decide whether or not to keep open the Flying Saucer mobile home park or to close it. This isn't a city-owned property. It's a privately owned property. And frankly, I think the narrative that was given by the owners of this property was really an amazing testament to the fact that they've kept this property open for the last 75 years. even recognizing many of the hardships over so many of those years. And so, and I got the sense at the beginning of tonight's hearing, because of the many directions that were given, that this isn't a municipality that has rezoning hearings quite like many other cities in the metropolitan area. And so staying focused on your quasi-judicial role and not venturing into a legislative role is really important. And many of you disclosed before we started tonight that you had received emails, but you hadn't read them because you knew that you couldn't do that before tonight's hearing, because you all, the 7 of you, sit as judges. You're judging. But what you have to judge are the facts against the criteria. And the criteria isn't criteria that we created. And frankly, I'm guessing you didn't create the criteria, but your predecessors created the criteria. And your predecessors created the comprehensive plan. And that comprehensive plan was last done in 2015. And being a land use attorney who makes my way from jurisdiction to jurisdiction throughout the course of a month, I will tell you, I haven't seen a reference in a comprehensive plan that is as specific to one particular parcel as your comprehensive plan focuses on this one. And it has said, we want it to be multifamily. We want it to be residential. You may not have said that. And I grant that some of you probably weren't here in 2015 approving the comprehensive plan. But for everyone else in the community who relies on these documents, that's your document. That's the city's document. And that's what we get to rely on when we make decisions about property, purchasing property and selling property. Because I know it was stated by one of the members tonight, and it was stated articulately, Sheridan doesn't want more apartments. Sheridan doesn't want more apartments. And all I have to do is rely on your comprehensive plan. And your comprehensive plan and your housing assessment, and your housing assessment, it was of course done much more recently than your comprehensive plan, says not true. Not only do we want them, we need them. And I actually think the comment that you made, Councilman, about the net increase, I thought was really insightful, because I've been sitting here for the last few months thinking about this project, thinking about it's 362, and it's not. It's 200. It's 200 different types of units. There is no doubt that this particular property, which I've been a 55-year resident of Denver and Southeast Denver, and so I've driven by this site for years and years and years, and it is unique. And the housing type is very unique. But that doesn't mean that this family doesn't have the right to sell it and to close it, because they've made that decision. And so the decision that you have tonight is really, again, to go back to your staff's presentation, which was really very well detailed, is to go back to the very criteria. And I'm not going to repeat that for you because you've seen it already. But your own professionals have reviewed your code, and they did a comprehensive analysis, and they made a determination, and they made a recommendation that this particular land use request meets all of the criteria. In fact, it only needs to meet one of the criteria in terms of the comprehensive plan or change of conditions, and it meets both. And so it meets those. And notwithstanding the fact that this room had more people last month for the Planning Commission, your Planning Commission made a recommendation of approval 4-1, that you should approve this rezoning as well. And so those are the types of information that is important in your role as a quasi-judicial decider of fact in making your decision tonight. We appreciate your time. We appreciate the attention that you've played in all of this. As has been mentioned, the act of finding a relocation specialist isn't a requirement of your code. It isn't a requirement of closing down the Flying Saucer, but it's something that my client has willingly stepped up and said, we're willing to help. Not because we have to, but because we want to help, because we think it's the right thing to do. And so I have been a part of those conversations about hiring that relocation expert as well, and looking forward to implementing those relocation services upon your approval tonight of this rezoning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. I'm supposed to have one more announcement about public comment closing, and ask if someone could go check in the lobby and make sure nobody else out there wants to give public comment. Thank you. Is there someone here still who wants, you've had your time to speak? What's that?
No, at this point.
No, we don't
Yeah,
want a rebuttal from public. Thank you. Okay, so I will now close the public hearing, the time being 9:10 p.m. and we'll reconvene the regular city council meeting. Now we'll have the discussion of the application. So this is our opportunity, council, to discuss our views on this and create the formal record of the basis for our decision making. So I want to encourage all of you to share your thoughts, share your rationale for the way that you will be voting on this. Anybody want to jump in? I'm happy to open if that's what council wants to hear, but yes, you can? Okay, go ahead.
Start. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to come and give us your opinions, and I really value them. I read through a lot of comments that were also presented to us, and trying to take all the personal out of it. At the end of the day, what we're doing is rezoning. We shouldn't be here telling the owner who they can or cannot sell to. And I think that's where a lot of the basis of these comments came from. So based on that, I'm going to vote on the rezoning, and probably very favorably.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to jump in?
I do. You know, we talk about Sheridan's history, and we're losing a lot of our history because we're letting them tear down things, put up new things. This has been part of Sheridan for 75 years. Yeah, I drive by it all the time. And I look at that, I look at all the trees and everything. And we can't lose our history, because if we let them do that and it's gone, we can't get it back.
Is history one of the criteria that we're supposed to be deciding on tonight?
Yeah, that, and we don't need more apartments.
Anybody else want to go ahead? I'm looking that for everyone to hopefully say something on what their thought process is.
I lived in Sheridan for 20 years, and I've seen apartments go up. I've seen houses being rebuilt. I've seen a lot of good things for Sheridan. My understanding is that I always thought the RV was a temporary place. That was my understanding, that it's a place that you only stay temporarily. I did not understand that people were living there for years. So part of my confusion when it came to coming and listening to people that lived in the RV park for, I don't know, years. It's really the rezoning part of it is kind of easy for me to vote on that, because I've always understood that RV parks were temporary lived spaces. So that's pretty much all I want to say.
Thank you. Anything yet? Okay,
I have one more thing to say.
go ahead.
He brought up the thing about $1,700. You know, I figured out the math. I couldn't afford your apartment. That's way too much for me, and I make good money, but I still couldn't afford your apartment. So that's a lot. I'm done.
Okay.
I just want to say I appreciate so much the residents that came, you know, the Allfasts who've been here for 5 months, maybe coming and seeing how we do business in our council meetings. My heart goes out to you. I feel for you. I hear what you're saying. And your message, I just can't imagine, you know, the position that you've been in. It's had to have been very difficult. I heard you say that it was divisive for your family to figure out what to do. And I personally believe you have every right to sell to whoever you want, you know, and I would guess that if one of those 4 buyers had come up with enough money, that it's probably something you'd consider. But it seems like it is a lot of management that your family no longer wants to do, and something's going to happen with that property regardless. I am, you know, hearing everything here, and I really came into this blank slate, just trying to hear the facts, and I have to make a decision. But hearing that there are residents there that have felt that there was some misinformation being spread, that they understood that it was a temporary situation. I never really formed any opinion about the RV park. I've just passed it and I like that fence with the rocks in it on the corner. But I see, you know, there isn't, you know, it's not like we can keep it from happening. I am personally for rezoning. I think that it does go with the plan of the city, which isn't my choice. It's something that happened as a conglomerate or as a group, you know, that came up with how this city should grow. And I want the residents that have come here to know that it is absolutely nothing personal at all. I don't know there's no way to go without hurting somebody's feelings here. I appreciate that everyone has come today. I'm going to vote for the rezoning.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Kind of to echo what Councilmember Whitaker said, I really do appreciate everyone who came out, both for and against this rezoning, and I feel for you, you know, that the folks in the RV park, because like Jay is saying, this, you know, there's rights that property owners have, and that's part of our job as the council as well, is to protect all of our constituents and their rights. Property owners have a right to sell to who they want to sell to. If it were your house, would you want someone telling you whether you could sell it to someone or not, or who you had to sell it to? You know, so I think there has to be respect for that, and there has to be some respect for, you know, what the family has done for the community. It sounds like it was unsustainable, and that they're making the right choice for themselves. I was on the council. I've been on council since 2008, so I came just after our very last large market rate development at Ivana, but I was on the council that did the comp plan in 2015. And so I understand, you know, what our goals were there. And they were very clearly stated in that plan and very particular to this property. And we have put so much on the line with the River Point development that we have an obligation to protect that investment for all of Sheridan. It would be an extremely negative experience for this community if we did not approve this and then one of those other permitted uses went into that area. And again, we can't control that. The property owners could decide to sell it to whoever they want or develop it in whatever way they want to. And this particular property owner has other developments that are not residential, so they know what to do, right? So that's a real risk. It's a real risk to us and to all of our other residents. And that's not to say I'm disregarding these residents, but I can't weigh their predicament here against everybody else in the city who's putting their trust in us to make a good decision here. I feel like it also does support our housing needs. We all know that the city and the whole metro area need more housing. We will get net new housing out of this, even if it is market rate. And as we've noted, we haven't built much market rate in the last 10 years. It fits into our plan. We also get some new facilities out of it. We get a trail and a bridge that all of our residents and even the whole region can enjoy. But I think the main point is it's going to be sold no matter what we do tonight. So I think we should go forward with the rezoning because the current proposal protects the interests of the city of Sheridan and all of our residents. Okay, anybody have any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I think as the owner of the Flying Saucer RV Park, you know, with more power, like being the owner of a place that has, you know, up to 160 residents, I just think that there's more responsibility that comes, you know, so I hope that the new ownership would, you know, hope and pray that the new ownership would take it into account that those people need help, you know, and have a serious budget, you know, in regards to that.
Mhm.
And make sure that those folks get landed. But, you know, we're not here making that decision. So ultimately, I would be looking at rezoning as well. So.
You have anything to share, Councilmember Kelly, or?
The way how I look at it is that when you're an owner, it's completely different than when you're leasing and renting. When you're leasing and renting, you have to look at the fact that it's there has to be an end game to that lease or that rent. So this is just one of those situations. If they say that the maximum time is 6 months, June is 7. So, I mean, that's how I look at it. Whether the place is $1,700 a month or whatever the case is, the place where I stay at right now, where I'm renting, is $1,700. And I've been staying in that place for the last 2 years just to have my seat here. So my lease is up. So guess what? That doesn't mean that I'm staying. That doesn't mean that I can say, I'm not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't work that way. We know that we're adults. So I'm going to vote yes on this as well.
Thank you. I've heard from everybody now. Is there anything else that you've thought of that you want to share before we move on? Okay. So I will call for a motion and a second. I think this is we're moving on to, I'm sorry, let me direct this to staff first. Do I need to introduce ordinance number 17?
It's already on the floor. We've seen a motion in a second to
Okay.
bring it to a vote. But I would ask that, you know, we briefly discussed the code, I think, after there's a motion on the floor, just whether or not you believe it complies with the code requirements for rezoning.
Okay. So I need a motion and a second, and then we can talk about how it meets the requirements.
Should this be something that's on our screens?
It should be up on your screens. You may have to log back in. Might have timed out. My apologies.
Do we need to close the public hearing before we do that? Because I show public hearing on my screen here.
If you can sign out and sign back in, it should show you ordinance 17.
We have closed the public hearing. So it's closed.
If you need assistance, let me know.
Yeah, there's no log.
There's no log out button or
on the
anything, so.
Screen.
No.
Oh, do we swipe it away?
What do you do?
Mine is different than both of everybody else's, so.
Yeah, you do.
Mine's didn't do it.
You could do a roll call to vote too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're having quite a bit of technical difficulties today, obviously.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to move forward with a roll call vote.
Okay. So can we get a verbal
We'll need that.
motion in a second,
We'll need a
please?
motion in a second verbally. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking for a motion or a second and a motion and a second from council. And you can say that instead of putting it in the software. And they're moving to approve ordinance 17. Is that the right motion?
Is that the ordinance number? Yeah. So it could be, I move to approve motion, ordinance 17. I move to approve the rezoning. I think whatever shows the intent of the council.
I move to approve the rezoning of 2500 West Hamden.
I second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Whitaker and a second from Councilmember Stang. So to talk through why or how this meets all of the criteria that we've been given to consider. Does council want me to just go ahead and go through this, or does anybody want to volunteer? I made notes, but
Yeah, and I'm not saying you have to go through every single criteria, just what the council's thoughts are on code compliance. I think we heard quite a bit of other opinions, but I just want to make sure we get the code on the record.
okay. I mean, for me, what I heard was that it meets all of the criteria that we need to consider, with the possible exception of it not being detrimental to health, safety and welfare of present or future inhabitants. I think that was the crux of the discussion tonight, was the fact that it is detrimental to some of our residents. I mean, we can't deny that. But it meets all the other 8 criteria to consider. And it clearly it clearly follows what we've laid out in our comprehensive plan.
One clarification is from your perspective concerning the criteria on detrimental to health. Is it to all residents, or do you think on whole it's positive?
As I
towards the city of
mentioned,
Sheridan?
it's detrimental to the subset of residents who are in the RV park.
Right, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. On the whole, it's beneficial to the entire city. Anybody else have thoughts on that? Do you think I've stated kind of generally what? Okay. All right, are we good now? Okay.
I think the clerk will do a roll call vote now.
Yes. Councilmember Marino? Stang?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Butterfloor?
Yes.
Whitaker?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
And Camacho?
No.
That passes with a 6-1 vote.
Thank you. Okay. So we've covered ordinance 17. So we're going to move on to resolution 36 of 2025. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Sheridan, Colorado, approving and accepting a development agreement between the City of Sheridan and Garrett Acquisitions LLC.
I have a motion on the board from Councilmember Kelly and a second by Councilmember Moreno.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on resolution 36? I will say that I know we didn't make this a condition, but I do I appreciate the good faith effort to work with the residents on relocation. And I know it's not part of this resolution because we can't make it part of the resolution, but still appreciate that. Anybody have any other discussion on resolution 36? Okay, can we have a vote, please?
Yes. Councilmember Stang?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Butterfloor?
Yes.
Councilmembers Whitaker?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
Macho?
Yes.
Moreno?
Yes.
That approves unanimously.
Thank you. All right, next tonight we have Mayor's Choice. I wanted to congratulate everyone who was newly elected in our recent elections, or re-elected in some cases. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the next council will do, what kind of ideas for new legislation they might have. Maybe once in a while, I'll come show up and bother you. But yeah, again, good races all around and I appreciate all of you for running and being willing to provide public service. Council members, do you have anything you want to bring up tonight? Anything?
I do.
Go ahead.
Now that the election is over, I would really like to see all of the campaign signs picked back up by the candidates that left them out. As I drove around today, I counted at least 10.
That's it?
Yeah, I know, right?
It's not that bad.
But I would really, I just think it's a bad look to leave those out there this long after the election.
I like my face being out there.
They make good yard.
Yeah, they make good yard signs. I probably got the best yard signs out there. I like my face being out there.
All right. Any other council members want to share anything tonight? No? Okay, we have an opportunity for public comment. Shall not exceed a total of 20 minutes and limited to 2 minutes per speaker. And are people allowed to comment on what we did tonight or no? Because I think that makes a difference to probably whether people want to speak or
It
not.
has ended at this point. There's no more entry into the record, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't have any effect. We can't restrict what people say.
Yeah.
People should know that it will not have an impact on the approval that was done
Okay,
tonight.
thank you. All right, so there's an opportunity for public comment if anyone would like to speak to council. Nope, looks like everyone's ready to go. Okay, then we'll adjourn. Time is 9:31 p.m. Thank you all.